I wasn't invited to my sister's wedding. They said it wasn't personal, but they made it perfectly clear. I was never really part of their plans. So I planned something else. Peace. And I never looked back. They sometimes silence isn't passive. It's power refusing to explain itself again. Said the guest list was tight. Just not tight enough to exclude 120 strangers instead of me, her brother. She didn't just forget to invite me. She erased me like I was never part of her story. When they cut me from there, they used my loyalty like a ladder. And once they reached their peace, they kicked it away lives. I didn't argue. I booked a seat somewhere they'd never reach. Peace. I wasn't invited to my own sister's wedding. Not because I caused drama, and not because I live somewhere remote and unreachable, but because I'm a source of trouble because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat. My mom, a polite way of saying, I've been cut out of the family without an official announcement. My sister's text came one afternoon like any other, but when I read it, I felt my heart drop to the floor. My name is Morgan. Forgiveness is a gift, not a contract. And I was done signing blank checks, 32 years old, a regular older brother, nothing special, except for always being the one to clean up the messes. My family left behind, my teenage years, were all about patching up the holes. My sister Haley, now 28, left every time she stumbled, whether what hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me. It was a breakup, losing a job, or just being bored and lost. Haley always called me and I always showed up, and now I'm left. Out of her wedding, Haley's message was short and fake. Hey, just letting you know the GU list is because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat. Finalized, we had to cut a lot. Hope you understand. Love, you understand. I'm not a distant cousin no one's seen in 10 years. I'm not some old classmate she kept around out of politeness. I'm her brother, the one who drove across state lines. What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me to bring her home after. She was dumped, the one who covered her rent when her bank account was empty. The one who stayed up at night listening to her cry about work stress. And now I'm being tossed aside like I'm a stranger. They used my loyalty like a ladder. And once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. Stared at my screen. At first I thought there had to be a mistake, that this was some dumb joke. But then when I called Mom, everything became painfully clear. She picked up after 2 rings. Her voice was unusually cheerful. Morgan, sweetheart, what's going? What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me on. I didn't beat around the bush. I just got a message from Haley. She said the guest list is finalized and I'm not on it. What's going on? There was a suspicious pause. Then Mom sighed, that kind of sigh that always made me. Sometimes silence isn't passive. It's power refusing to explain itself again. Feel like a kid overreacting. Oh, Morgan, don't make a big deal out of it. It's just awing. It's just a wedding. I felt my chest tighten. I'm her brother, Mom. How could I not be invited? She clicked her tongue, that sound that they used my loyalty like a ladder. And once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. Always drove me crazy. It's nothing personal, sweetheart. Haley and Jeremy have to save money. Everything's so expensive now. Everyone has to compromise a little. I tried to stay calm. Mom, I just saw Haley's post on Instagram. She booked a fancy banquet hall and they used my loyalty like a ladder. And once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. San Diego, over 120 guests. Even her high school friends are invited. Am I worth less than them? Her voice suddenly turned firm. You're overreacting. Morgan, don't let this little thing hurt. You hurt myself. No, Mom got it wrong. This wasn't the first time, because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat. I'd been treated like my presence was optional. I was used to being overlooked, but this time I wasn't staying quiet. I didn't argue. I didn't beg to be reunited. I hung up, and for the first time in my life, I decided if some bonds aren't broken, they were never real to begin with. They don't need me. I don't need them. I opened my laptop and pulled up a travel site. If Haley thought I'd just sit at home moping on her wedding day, she was dead wrong. I was going far, really far. I was going to sometimes silence isn't passive. It's power refusing to explain itself again, take the vacation of a lifetime. And for the first time in years, I was going to put myself first. I used to think if I was just good enough, patient enough, there would come a day I'd be appreciated. But the more I think, because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat back, the more I realize I was just a shadow, always there when needed, always gone when things got better. No one ever asked if I was tired. No one ever stopped to say thank you. Haley has always been emotional, impulsive, and blind trusting. They used my loyalty like a ladder. And once they reached their peace, they kicked it away in relationships. I still remember the night she was 22 crying like crazy on the side of the road after some guy she dated for 3 months dumped her cold a time. I was on a night shift at the hospital, 14 straight hours in. This wasn't petty. This was protection. From now on, I protect my peace the ER, but when I got her call at 1 a.m., I dropped everything and drove straight from Riverside to Santa Monica. She was curled up on the curb, makeup-smeared eyes red, clutching a half-empty bottle of cheap wine. I wrapped her in what hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me, my jacket, and took her back to my tiny apartment where I was still sharing a room with a buddy. A few months later, she lost her job at a cafe. Chronic lateness, she called me in a panic, crying that she didn't have enough forgiveness is a gift, not a contract. And I was done signing blank checks to pay rent. I didn't have much, but I wired her $900, the money I'd saved for next semester's tuition. I had to postpone my lab course, but I didn't regret it because back then I thought that's what a brother is supposed to do. They used my loyalty like a ladder, and once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. Then came Ryan, the pretty brainless marketing guy. Mom adored him like a Hallmark movie character. He really loves Haley, she'd say. Even though it was obvious he was just using her credit card, Haley was blinded, and I was the bad guy for warning. What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me, her, and when. He cleaned out her apartment and vanished, without a trace, who drove 3 hours to San Diego to pick his sister up off the living room floor. And what did Mom say? Morgan, don't be hard on her, how sensitive you're her. Because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat. Brother, you should understand, right? It was always me who had to understand. Haley never had to understand anyone every time she messed up. Mom found a way to justify it. Haley's still young. Haley's not as strong as you. Haley just needs a little. This wasn't petty. This was protection. From now on, I protect my peace. More time, 10 years passed. And that little more time turned me into an unconditional lifeline. She called me when she lost her phone, when she needed to book a doctor's appointment, even just to ask which dress to wear for an interview. Some bonds aren't broken. They were never real to begin with. Was always there, always listening. But when I spent a week in the hospital with appendicitis, who came to visit? No one, even my mom, who poured love into Haley like an overflowing glass, only called me once and ended the call with, I thought because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat you were used to. Pain by now. Morgan. Something inside me began to rot from that moment. I started to pull back, stopped talking, stopped sharing, but I kept helping, kept carrying the load because I thought it was the right thing to do. This wasn't petty. This was protection. From now on, I protect my peace. Thought if I just kept loving them, they'd see it. But the truth is, love is never enough when someone decides to ignore it from the beginning. And now they weren't just ignoring it. They cut me out completely, as if I were some unnecessary. What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me, side character in their life story. They didn't invite me, didn't mention me. And when I reacted, my mom had the nerve to call it overreacting. She could invite 120 people, hire a live band, throw an outdoor beach wedding. But there was no room. What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me, for me, the invisible support beam during the years she nearly lost. Everything. I sat there in front of my laptop as the afternoon breeze slipped through the window. A cup of cold coffee sat on the table next to my phone. Was Haley's. They used my loyalty like a ladder. And once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. Message still short, still flat, still emotionless. Hope you understand. I typed out a reply, then deleted it, typed again, deleted again. Finally, I turned off my phone, I understood, and I wasn't going to forgive this time. I didn't want to argue anymore. Forgiveness is a gift, not a contract. And I was done signing blank checks, didn't want another text from Mom telling me to be understanding of Haley, or a fake sweet call from my sister trying to smooth things over. They chose to erase me from the biggest day of our family. So I would erase them from the what hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me priority list of my life. I opened my laptop. My fingers flew across the keyboard, clicking like I was unleashing every ounce of anger. Within 40 minutes, I had booked my dream vacation, a week at a 5-star resort in St. Lucia, an ocean view. Some bonds aren't broken. They were never real to begin with. Suite with spa services, infinity pool, and private balcony breakfast. It wasn't cheap, but I was done living frugally to help everyone else. This time I was spending money for me, not to support the family, not to lend my sister a few $100, because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat. This was my vacation to do something I'd never allowed myself before enjoy, without asking anyone's permission after booking. I stood up and walked out to the balcony. The late summer wind in Riverside brushed my face, but instead of feeling cool, it felt cold. What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me, and empty. This was no longer a place I wanted to stay. Not during the week. My family would throw a big wedding and pretend I never existed. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram in my gallery. I had a photo from a This Wasn't Petty. This was protection. From now on, I protect my peace business trip to Santa Barbara, me, sitting in a cafe, espresso in hand, a faint smile just relaxed enough to not look fake. I adjusted the colors, added a warm filter, then wrote the caption they say. Being cut from the guest list is awful. They used my loyalty like a ladder, and once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. But hey, I think I'll survive. I hit post 10 minutes later. The notification started pouring in. My cousin Tyler sent a laughing emoji. An old friend commented, "Don't forget to take me next time." And the most surprising, Aunt Karen, the only relative who sometimes silence isn't passive. It's power, refusing to explain itself again. Ever stood up for me, commented, "Proud of you for choosing your own happiness." I leaned back against the wall and quietly read every reply. No word from Mom, no emoji from Haley. Perfect the next morning. I rolled my suitcase to the airport. No, they used my loyalty like a ladder. And once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. Announcement, no itinerary left behind. I boarded that plane like I was stepping out of the role I'd been playing for over a decade, the role of the enduring brother, the mature child who has to sacrifice the man who was never allowed to get what hurt most. Wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me. Angry first-class champagne poured to the brim. A travel magazine lay on the armrest with a bold headline, "Live Fully." For once I chuckled softly during the entire flight. My phone stayed on silent. When we landed at Huara Airport, a sleek black SUV, sometimes silence isn't passive. Its power refusing to explain itself again was already waiting. The driver, a local man with a kind smile, had chill towels ready. I didn't have to lift a finger. Everything was perfectly arranged because I booked the highest-end package. As we drove along the coastline, I rolled the window down. Sometimes silence isn't passive. Its power refusing to explain itself again. The ocean breeze carried scents of salt and jasmine in the distance. Red-roofed houses dotted the hills, and the water sparkled turquoise. I'd never seen the world look so beautiful when I stepped into the resort lobby. It felt like walking into a painting, because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat. High ceilings, palm trees growing indoors, glossy dark wood at the front desk, and staff greeting me with an icy tropical cocktail. I handed over my passport. The receptionist smiled. "Welcome back, Mr. Morgan." I laugh. "This is my first time here. Why welcome back?" Sometimes Silence isn't passive. It's power refusing to explain itself again. She winked, because we hope you'll want to return. I didn't respond, but in my head, I knew. Yeah, maybe I will come back, not for them. For me. I entered the room, dropped onto the bed, opened my phone. Not to read messages, but forgiveness is a gift, not a contract. And I was done signing blank checks to post another photo, the view from the balcony, endless blue ocean golden sunlight, a cocktail glass catching the light. This time the caption was shorter on door closes, another open straight to the sea. Then I locked my phone and lay still, letting forgiveness is a gift, not a contract. And I was done signing blank checks. The silence settled. They chose to cut me out of their lives, and me. I chose to live a life where I no longer needed anyone's approval. The sound of waves outside blended with the ocean breeze, creating a softness so soothing I almost forgot, because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat. I once belonged to a family that never let me breathe. I was stretched out on a sunned pea colada in hand, soft jazz playing from the Bluetooth. Speaker by the pool, wrapped in a crisp white robe ironed at every seam by the resort. Sometimes silence isn't passive. It's power refusing to explain itself again, staff, and in front of me an endless horizon, clear and cloudless, until the phone started vibrating. At first I ignored it. I was used to putting my old world on silent mode, but then it buzzed again and again, then lit up. Every 10, some bonds aren't broken. They were never real to begin with. Seconds I picked it up, ready to turn it off completely, when a name popped up that made me pause. Jake. My cousin. One of the few people in the family whose brain was still intact. I opened the message, just one line, bro. Not because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat. Joking, Haley's wedding. Just blue. Up, I squinted, staring at that line for 3 seconds. Then another message popped up immediately. The groom walked out during the reception in front of everyone. Haley's losing it. I couldn't help it. I laughed, a real laugh. Dry forgiveness is a gift, not a contract. And I was done signing blank checks, pushed up from somewhere between my throat and chest, where there used to be pain now, only sarcasm. The next message was from Mom. Morgan, call me right now, it's serious. I didn't reply, just sighed, set the phone down and took a long sip. Sometimes, silence isn't passive. It's power refusing to explain itself again of my cocktail. But it wouldn't stop buzzing. A young waitress brought over another plate of fruit, looked at me and smiled. You must be popular. Your phone won't quit. I shrugged, smiled faintly. That's the sound of disaster, just not mine. I opened the what hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me. Phone again. Messages from Aunt Karen, from Tyler, from unknown numbers, from Haley, please, I need you. Please answer me. Morgan, I was wrong. Okay, but don't do this. Then a message from Jake, this one longer. And Haley got into a huge, they used my loyalty like a ladder. And once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. Fight in the prep room. No one knows why, just heard Haley yelling, "You're a hypocrite." Then he walked straight out of the wedding hall. Not a word left her standing there in her wedding dress. Stunned. I nearly choked on my drink laughing. But what hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me. Jake wasn't done. Your mom started yelling to call the groom's family for an explanation. Aunt Lisa and Uncle Ron were screaming at each other about whose fault it all was. Grandma, I raised an eyebrow. Grandma shouted in front of everyone, I told, because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat. You not inviting Morgan, karma's real. Then pointed straight at Haley. At that point I laughed so loud a few nearby guests turned to look. I raised my hand to apologize, but inside, I was so satisfied, I could have danced barefoot in the sand. What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me. My grandmother, the one who always stayed silent during family gatherings to not get involved, was the first to stand up for me at the very wedding that erased me from their lives. I pulled the sunshade down over my face as I read, because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat. Jake's last message. Haley's gone nuts, throwing things, screaming at everyone that it's all your fault. Your mom's been calling non-stop aunt. Lisa almost called the cops when Haley nearly threw a wine glass at the groom before he walked out. I didn't text back. Forgiveness is a gift, not a contract. And I was done signing blank checks. I just opened my camera and took a picture of the view in front of me, the beach in St. Lucia. At dusk, crystal blue sky, gentle waves rolling like they'd never heard of chaos. I posted it to Instagram with the caption, "Didn't get this, wasn't petty." This was protection. From now on, I protect my peace, invited to the wedding. No big deal. Getting uninvited from a disaster is even better. And I turned off my phone. I was lying on a lounger by the infinity pool, feet propped on the wooden railing, one hand holding a mojito, the other a forgiveness is a gift, not a contract. And I was done signing blank checks novel. I hadn't gotten past page 3. Not because it wasn't good, but because I kept getting interrupted by things that made me laugh out loud. One of them was the message still glowing on my screen. "Please, I need you. Please answer me from, because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat." Haley. I kept reading it like it was a riddle. No, that couldn't be. This was the same sister who less than a week ago had to trim the guest list and didn't think her own brother deserved a seat at her golden wedding, and this wasn't petty. This was protection. From now on, I protect my peace. Now that the groom had bailed, now she remembers me. I set the glass down on the table, wiped my fingers on the napkin, and pulled up 2 more messages that had just arrived. "Morgan, it's Mom. Call me now. This isn't the time to." They used my loyalty like a ladder, and once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. Be stubborn. A few seconds later, the family's falling apart. And where are you in our biggest moment of need? You choose to run away like a child? I'm so disappointed. A wonderful Haley begging like I was the last lifeline in a burning ocean. This wasn't petty. This was protection. From now on, I protect my peace and Mom back on her usual track. You're the problem, not her. I opened my blocked messages, more than 20 unread texts from Mom, from Haley, from Aunt Lisa, and a few unknown numbers I guessed were distant relatives' moms. Messages kept going. We're family. Sometimes silence isn't passive. It's power refusing to explain itself again, Morgan. No matter what, you can't turn your back on your own blood. Haley's breaking down. She needs you. I need you. If you had any maturity, you'd be back here helping us through this right now. I didn't know whether to laugh or throw, because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat. My phone into the sea. Help, I've been helping my whole life. Mom, I helped when no one bothered to ask if I was okay. I helped when Haley fell apart, while you kept blaming the world instead of ever looking at your daughter's selfish. This wasn't petty. This was protection. From now on, I protect my peace habits. And now when the bomb they built themselves finally exploded, they want me to come back and save them. I opened the screenshot of Haley's message and read it. Slowly. "Please, I need you." I typed a reply. "Funny. You didn't need me on this. Wasn't petty. This was protection. From now on, I protect my peace, the most important day of your life, but now you do, after it all falls apart." Billy did it, typed another. "Sorry. I'm busy enjoying my little childish meltdown." The related that too. In the end, I just sent one picture, St. Lucia's sunset, that they used my loyalty like a ladder. And once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. Sky-blazing red lights sparkling off the waves like fire with one line. I survived being cut from the guest list. Now I'm just living. Then I blocked them all again. I didn't know what the feeling in my chest was. Anger, satisfaction. Or just because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat, relief. But I knew one thing for sure. I didn't want to save anyone anymore, especially not people who only saw me as their backup plan a while later. The phone buzzed again this time. A voicemail. I wasn't planning to listen, but curiosity. They used my loyalty like a ladder. And once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. One, I hit play. Mom's voice, sharp and frantic. "Morgan, you need to stop this childish behavior. You can't just keep running away. Haley is having a meltdown and you're acting like you don't even care. Family is supposed to stick together when things are hard. What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me, not disappear." I let out a bitter laugh and shook my head. Family isn't supposed to use you like a doormat until it wears thin, then only remember you when the floor gets dirty. Another voicemail or top plate this. Time. Haley's voice choked up. "Sometimes silence isn't passive. It's power refusing to explain itself again. I'm sorry. Okay, I shouldn't have left you out of the wedding. I was stupid. But now I don't know what to do. You're the only one who can calm me down. I need you." I closed my eyes and quietly deleted the message. Sometimes silence isn't passive. It's power refusing to explain itself again, not cold. I've just had enough. I stood up from the lounger and stepped onto the warm sand, letting the breeze carry away those too late pleas. There was only one thought in my mind. This isn't my problem anymore. I spent my entire youth. What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me compromising, understanding, trying to be the ideal big brother. Everyone assumed, never got angry, but on the very day Haley, the sister I cherished like my own flesh and blood, pushed me out of her wedding, something inside me cracked. And now when she calls, sometimes silence isn't passive. It's power refusing to explain itself again. My name like I'm her savior after setting her own big day on fire. I just found it laughable without hesitation. I scrolled to 3 familiar names in my contacts. Mom Emily, Jake pressed and held selected. Block. No second guessing, no regret. Every plea they used my loyalty like a ladder. And once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. Every missed call, every message full of exclamation points from now on, drowned in silence for the first time. Time in my life, I chose peace over obligation. I placed the phone back on the table, switched on, do not disturb, and returned to the sometimes silence isn't passive. It's power refusing to explain itself again, lounger, where my half-finished cocktail waited. I had an entire afternoon left to enjoy, and I wasn't about to let anyone drag me back into the mess. They created a resort staff member passed by noticing me gazing at the ocean and politely paused. Mr. What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me, Morgan. "We're about to start sunset yoga on the beach. Would you like to join?" I smiled. "No, thank you. I'm perfectly fine right here." He nodded and walked away, and I leaned back, arms behind my head, inhaling the salty breeze mixed with coconut. They used my loyalty like a ladder, and once they reached their peace, they kicked it away from the drink beside me. It was strange. No ringing phone. No responsibility suddenly falling from the sky onto my shoulders. Just me and freedom. I must have dozed off without realizing it. When I opened my eyes, the sky was glowing. Orange sunset painting. Forgiveness is a gift, not a contract. And I was done signing blank checks. The sea with a silver shimmer. I sat up, stretched my shoulders, and was just about to go for a walk when my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I was about to ignore it, but then the name on the screen made me pause. Melissa. They used my loyalty like a ladder, and once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. The only cousin in the extended family with any sense of right and wrong, also one of the few who ever stood up for me during those dinner table ambushes. I answered. Morgan. Her voice was breathless, excited, slightly chaotic. "Oh my God, you finally." What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me picked up. "I just need to say this one thing, and then you can do whatever you want." "Okay," I chuckled. "Say it. I've got under 3 minutes before my 5-star dinner reservation." Melissa took a long, audible breath. "Okay, so," Haley shattered a whine. "What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me. Glass on the floor threatened to jump in the garden fountain. Your mom almost got into a fight with the maid. Ivana, grandma, stood up and said, "This is the universe punishing us for ignoring the one person who always sacrificed without complaining." They used my loyalty like a ladder, and once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. raised an eyebrow. Now even Grandma had joined Team Truth. Melissa went on. Then your mom turned around and blamed guess who, don't say me. Yep. She said if Morgan had been here, this wouldn't have happened. I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud. They used my loyalty like a ladder. And once they reached their peace, they kicked it away. A deep, drawn-out laugh of pure satisfaction. I took a sip of cold water and simply said, I don't care. Melissa was silent for a beat. Then she laughed too, I figured. But I just wanted you to know you're not crazy. Sometimes silence isn't passive. It's power refusing to explain itself again. You're not being unreasonable. They're the ones who blew it. I just wish I'd followed you from the start. I looked out to the ocean where the sun was slowly sinking like a red bronze disc. Maybe next time I'd pick this place again, and what hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me. A heartbeat saved me a spot, and Morgan, who I'm glad you didn't go back. I smiled for the first time in my life. I'm glad. I didn't too. We ended the call in quiet. No more words needed. I headed toward the beachfront restaurant. What hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me, where wine and steak were waiting. And in my mind, only one thought remained. They can patch up that ruined wedding together. As for me, I'm keeping this freedom. No matter what, Morgan's story is a powerful reminder about rediscovering oneself after years of sacrificing. This wasn't petty. This was protection. From now on, I protect my peace too much for others, especially for family. Sometimes we forget that love and sacrifice aren't always repaid the way we hope. Morgan's choice to walk away in search of peace and freedom was a bold one, showing that putting yourself first is sometimes necessary, and what hurt most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they moved on without me in order to live a fulfilling life. We can't always be the ones putting out fires for everyone else's problem. What do you think about Morgan's decision in this story? Would you be brave enough to choose yourself when your family needs you the most? Share. Because healing sometimes begins with leaving the table that never offered you a seat. Your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss more real-life stories about family and personal growth.